My daughter said my deafness was a blessing, a chance for her to finally take control. She thought the silence made me weak. She was about to hear just how loud my silence could be. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Let me back up and explain how I ended up a prisoner in my own home. My name is Robert. I build things, houses, mostly. For 40 years I've smelled sawdust and felt the solid thud of a hammer. My life was built on a solid foundation. Hard work, my love for Sarah, my late wife, and my hopes for Chloe, our only daughter. My life was solid, until that Tuesday. The sky was a sharp, unforgiving blue. I was high up, on the second floor of a new house frame. I signaled to my crew below. The rhythm of the job site was normal, loud, comforting. The whine of the saws, the shouts of the men. Then, the highway next to us exploded. A massive delivery truck blew a tire. It wasn't just a sound, it was a physical blow, a pressurized blast that hit me like a fist. It felt like someone drove spikes of white-hot pain deep into my ears. My head screamed. A high-pitched whine drowned out the world. I saw the chaos below, men scattering, dust rising. I stumbled back, the world tilting sideways, and then the whine faded. It left behind nothing, absolute terrifying nothing. I clutched my head. The world had gone mute. I looked down at my lead carpenter, John. He was yelling up at me. I clutched my head. The world had gone mute. I looked down at my lead carpenter, John. He was yelling up at me. His face was red, twisted in panic. His mouth was wide open, but I heard nothing. I was trapped behind glass, watching a world I couldn't reach. The silence didn't arrive gradually. It came like a thunderclap, and I had no idea how dark that silence would get. The ride to the hospital was a nightmare in slow motion. I saw the flashing red and blue lights painting the inside of the ambulance, but I only felt the vibration of the siren through the floor, a dull thrumming. It felt disconnected, distant. Urgency was happening all around me, and I was separate from it. I closed my eyes. I thought about Sarah. She passed 5 years ago. The silence in the house after she left was hard. The silence of the house after she left was hard. This silence, it was suffocating. It felt like being buried alive. When I woke up, the room was sterile white. The smell of antiseptic burned my nose. Chloe was there. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide with worry. But even then, confused and scared as I was, something felt wrong. Her worry felt too loud, too dramatic. A performance. She hugged me, too tight. Her expensive perfume was overwhelming. Choking me, I saw her mouth moving rapidly. Tears streamed down her cheeks. To me, she was a silent movie star in a melodrama, overacting for an audience of one. Behind her stood Mark, her husband of 3 years. Mark was a man of smooth hands and smoother talk. He was always chasing the next big investment, deals that always seemed to collapse just before they paid out. He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture meant to be reassuring. His grip felt cold, possessive. It felt less like comfort, and more like he was checking the quality of the merchandise. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked past me, already measuring the room. Dr. Evans arrived. He was the specialist, serious, direct. He carried a small whiteboard and a black marker. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He wrote in large, stark letters, acoustic trauma, severe swelling. Inner ear daemon. Is it permanent? I asked. My own voice sounded strange to me. A dull vibration in my chest that I couldn't hear from the outside. It was terrifying. Dr. Evans hesitated. That hesitation was louder than any scream. He erased the words. He wrote again. We hope temporary. The damage is profound. He paused, then added, weeks, maybe months. Recovery you uncertain. Weeks, months, uncertain. The words sat there, heavy and suffocating. I was 62. I was used to independence, to the noise of life, the roar of a circular saw, the laugh of my crew. Now I was adrift in a vacuum, and the sharks were already circling. The first week at home was torture. My house. The one Sarah and I saved for 10 years to buy. It felt alien. The comforting sounds of home were gone. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. the rumble of the furnace, the creak of the floorboards. It was a tomb. My tomb. Chloe took charge immediately. She carried a notepad everywhere. Her handwriting was sharp and precise. Aggressive. "Dad, you absolutely cannot be alone right now," she wrote. "Mark and I are moving in, until you're back on your feet." She underlined until, a promise or a threat. "We'll handle the business," she wrote. "The bills, everything. Everything." The word felt heavy. Final. At first I was grateful. I was disoriented. The world felt dangerous without sound. A car could hit me. The kettle could boil dry. I needed help, but their help soon felt like an occupation. They weren't just moving in, they were taking over. And the taking started immediately. The first betrayal was small, but it cut deep. It involved Aris. Maria was a kind woman who helped Sarah during her illness. She came by twice a week to clean and cook for me. A familiar, comforting presence in the silent house. I saw her arrive on Wednesday. Her smile was bright. She carried a casserole dish. Chloe met her at the door. I watched from the living room window. Chloe didn't open the door fully. She blocked the entrance. Her face was tight, cold. I saw her shaking her head. Maria looked confused. She held up the casserole dish. Chloe shook her head again, sharper this time. Maria's smile faded, replaced by hurt, confusion. Chloe pressed an envelope into Maria's hand. Severance. Maria looked past Chloe, trying to see me. Chloe shifted her weight, blocking the view completely. Maria left. She didn't look back. I went to the door, questioning. I pointed outside. "Where is Maria?" Chloe grabbed her notepad. Her pen scratched aggressively against the paper. "Maria is retiring, Dad," she wrote. "A lie." I knew Maria needed the work, she added. "We don't need outside help now. We are here." It wasn't about help, it was about isolation. They were cutting me off from the world, building walls around me. Then the control tightened. Chloe took my phone. "Easier if I manage your calls, Dad," she wrote, smiling too brightly. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "Less stress for you." Then she took my car keys. "Too dangerous. You might get disoriented." Then she took my wallet. "Simpler if I handle the groceries and finances." "You just rest." Simple for who? I was dependent. After a lifetime of self-reliance, I was suddenly helpless. A child in my own home, stripped of my dignity. I spent my days in my favorite armchair, the one Sarah used to sit in. I stared out the window. I watched the world move on without me. I missed Sarah so much, it ached. A physical pain in my chest. She would have known how to handle this. She would have held my hand, sat with me in the silence. Chloe didn't sit. She hovered. Like a warden, the second week the frustration began to outweigh the fear. Chloe and Mark would have long conversations right in front of me. They'd laugh, argue, make plans. They didn't forget I was there. They simply stopped caring that I could see them. I was furniture. When you lose one sense, the others sharpen. I watched them. I learned to read their body language. The subtle shifts that betrayed their true feelings. I saw the way Mark would tap his expensive watch impatiently when Chloe was writing a note for me. The quick, annoyed glances he shot my way. He'd roll his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. I saw the way Chloe's smile tightened when she handed me my dinner. It was a mask, and the mask was slipping. Something was wrong, very wrong, and the silence was amplifying it. They started rearranging the furniture. Small things at first. Moving the coffee table. Then, the curtains. Sarah had sewn them herself. A soft yellow floral pattern. They were replaced with something modern. Cold, gray, lifeless. "Just brightening the place up, Dad," Chloe wrote, underlining the word brightening. It didn't feel bright. It felt like an erasure. An erasure of Sarah. An erasure of me. They were erasing us from our own home. I tried to protest. I needed something familiar. I wanted to go to my workshop, just to feel the tools, the smell of the sawdust, my sanctuary. I pointed toward the back door. I made a hammering motion. Chloe blocked the door. She shook her head firmly. She grabbed the notepad. "No, Dad." Doctor said no stress. "The workshop is dangerous." She underlined dangerous. She paused, then added, "Mark and I have it under control." Under control. Their control. Their control. That's exactly what I was afraid of. I watched them in the kitchen, their heads bent close together. They weren't whispering. They were speaking normally. But to me it looked secretive, conspiratorial. The tension in the house was thick, worse than the silence. I was a prisoner, watching my life being dismantled by the person I loved most in the world. But the real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. 3 weeks of absolute, terrifying silence. I thought it would break me. Then it happened. It was early morning, Thursday. Gray light filtered through the ugly new curtains. I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why. I lay there staring at the ceiling, dreading another day of isolation. And then I heard it. Drip, drip, drip. The faucet in the downstairs bathroom. It was faint, muffled, like listening through thick cotton wool. But it was sound. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat up, straining, barely daring to breathe. I held my breath. Drip. It was real. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. The floorboards creaked under my weight. A beautiful, familiar sound. I heard the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant rumble of a truck passing on the street. Tears welled up, hot and sudden. Relief. Gratitude. The world rushed back in, not in a flood, but in a trickle. The silence was breaking. I rushed to the bathroom. I turned on the faucet. The splash of the water was a symphony. I laughed, a rusty, choked sound that echoed off the tiles. I had to tell Chloe. I had to share this miracle. I got dressed. My hands trembled with excitement. I headed downstairs, taking the steps faster than I had in weeks. I was halfway down when I heard voices. Chloe and Mark were in the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar. "Just taking too long, Chloe," Mark was saying. His voice was low, sharp, impatient. I hadn't heard his voice in weeks. It sounded harsher than I remembered. I stopped, gripping the banister, my knuckles white. "I know," Chloe replied. Her voice was strained, tired. "The doctor said yesterday that the recovery is stagnant. He thinks it's likely permanent now." Permanent. They had seen the doctor yesterday? They hadn't told me. They had let me believe there was still hope. The lie sat heavy in my stomach. But that wasn't the worst part. "Good," Mark said. His voice was cold, devoid of sympathy. "That actually simplifies things." Simplifies things. My deafness? A good thing? "If it's permanent, we can accelerate the guardianship process," Mark continued, his voice brisk, businesslike. "We need power of attorney by the end of the week. We can't wait for him to decline. The deafness itself is enough leverage." Guardianship? Power of attorney? My stomach twisted. They weren't helping me. They were taking over. "I'm still worried about the lawyer, Mark," Chloe said. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear.
A nervous habit I hadn't noticed until now.
"Mr. Peterson has known Dad for years. He's asking too many questions about the assets." "Peterson? My old friend. My assets." "Peterson is an old fool," Mark scoffed. "He's paid to follow instructions, Chloe. We just need to present a united front." He paused. I heard the clink of a coffee mug. "We need that capital," Mark said, his voice hardening. "My situation requires liquidity. We are running out of time." His situation. Not mine. This house. The business accounts. Mark lowered his voice, but I heard it clearly. "It's our ticket out of this mess." Our ticket. I stood frozen on the stairs. The joy of my recovery curdled into horror. The sounds I had craved were now bringing me a nightmare. I realized in that moment I couldn't tell them. If I told them I could hear, the conversation would stop. The truth would retreat back into the shadows. My deafness had been a shield for their greed. Now, my silence would be my weapon. I took a deep breath. I schooled my features. The dull, confused expression I had worn for 3 weeks. I slowly walked the rest of the way down the stairs, shuffling my feet heavily, so they would notice my arrival. The performance began. "Good morning, Dad," Chloe chirped. Her voice was suddenly overly loud. Slow, the way you talk to someone who is simple-minded. The switch was jarring. A second ago, she was sharp and conspiratorial. Now she was the caring daughter. She rushed over and guided me to a chair. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked, enunciating every syllable. I nodded, keeping my expression carefully neutral. It's strange hearing her voice again. It was harder, colder than I remembered. The voice of a stranger. Mark ignored me, sipping his coffee. Morning, he grunted. He didn't look up from his laptop. The contempt was palpable. He didn't see me as a person. He saw me as an obstacle. I sat down. Chloe handed me a mug. I focused on the sounds, grounding myself. The clink of the ceramic mug, the tapping of Mark's fingers on the keyboard, the ticking of the clock I thought was silent. I was listening, and what I heard next shattered me. He looks awful, Mark muttered. Chloe didn't respond immediately. It's depressing, Mark continued. It's like living in a nursing home. I froze. The coffee tasted like ash in my mouth. And the smell, Mark added, his voice dripping with disgust. He wrinkled his nose. Honestly, it's like old man smell everywhere. Old man smell. A burden in the house I built. Mark, shut up, Chloe hissed. What? It's not like he can hear us, Chloe, Mark snapped. Look at him. He's just sitting there, vacant. We need to move on this. Vacant. That's what they thought I was. An empty shell. My blood ran cold. I kept my eyes fixed on my coffee, stirring it slowly, careful not to react. My hands trembled with suppressed rage, but I kept them still. They weren't just managing my affairs. They were actively plotting against me, using my vulnerability as a weapon. And they despised me while they did it. The next few days were the hardest of my life. Pretending to be deaf while navigating the torrent of sounds was exhausting. My brain strained to process the input. But the emotional toll was far worse. I was a spy in my own life, listening to the meticulous planning of my own destruction. I learned everything. Mark wasn't just struggling. He was drowning in debt. His investments were a sham. A house of cards built on risky ventures. They had collapsed entirely, and he owed money to someone dangerous. I needed to know who. That afternoon, I got my answer. The tension in Mark spiked. He was constantly checking his phone. Jumpy.
Agitated.
His phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his face turned pale. He rushed into the study, closing the door. He thought I was napping in the armchair. I crept to the study door. I pressed my ear against the solid oak. Vince, listen to me, Mark pleaded. His voice was tight with fear. Desperation coated every word, not the smooth confidence he usually projected. Vince, the name sounded sharp, dangerous. I couldn't hear the other side, but Mark's response told me everything. No, Vince. Please, don't do that. Mark was begging now, whimpering. I swear, the money is coming. A pause. Vince was talking. Mark was sweating. Friday, Mark promised. Just give me 3 more days. The old man is signing the papers. It's a done deal. You'll have your money by Monday. He owed money to the wrong kind of people. My accident hadn't been a tragedy for them. It had been a lifeline, and they were willing to destroy me to save themselves. Later that evening, the disrespect became blatant, a calculated cruelty that stung more than the greed. The aroma of grilling steak filled the kitchen. Garlic, herbs, my stomach rumbled. I hadn't had a real meal in weeks. I watched them set the table. Wine glasses, steak knives. I sat at the dinner table, waiting, anticipating. Chloe approached me. She was holding a bowl. She placed it in front of me. Lukewarm canned soup, gray and thin, the slice of dry bread. She avoided eye contact. Then she turned to the stove. She served Mark and herself thick, juicy steaks. Roasted potatoes. The aroma was torture, a cruel reminder of what I was being denied. In my own home, I looked at the soup, then at their plates. I raised my hand.
Clenching weakly toward the steak.
I wanted real food. I wanted to be treated like a human being. Chloe looked at me. She spoke in that exaggerated, slow voice again, the one that made my skin crawl. No, Dad, she said, shaking her head like I was a toddler asking for candy. This is better for you. Better for me? The steak is too tough, she enunciated. Upset your stomach. She turned away before I could respond. I heard her mutter to Mark, low but clear. Like he can even taste the difference. Waste of good food on him. I ate the soup. Every spoonful was bitter with resentment. A muscle jumped in my jaw. The urge to scream, to flip the table, to throw the bowl at the wall. It was overwhelming. If I reacted with anger, I would confirm their narrative, that I was unstable, agitated. I had to endure the humiliation, swallow my pride along with the cold soup. To maintain my deception, I held it in. The silence my only refuge. But inside I was screaming, and I needed more than refuge. I needed proof. I needed to know the full extent of their plan. The next morning, Chloe was out. Mark was on another frantic phone call with Vince in the backyard, pacing like a caged animal. I went into the study. Chloe had commandeered it as her headquarters. I felt like a thief in my own home. I knew where Sarah used to hide the spare key for the filing cabinet. Inside a hollowed-out copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, it was still there. Sarah's little secret. I unlocked the drawer. My hands trembled. Not with fear, with rage. I found my bank statements, my retirement accounts, my life insurance policy, and I found a folder labeled Property Sale. My heart stopped. Inside were emails between Mark and a real estate developer, a man named Mr. Silva. I recognized the name, a flashy guy, known for being aggressive, a bottom feeder who specialized in quick flips. They were negotiating the sale of my house. The price was high. The market was booming. But it wasn't just the sale that horrified me. It was the justification Mark used to expedite the process. I read an email from Mark to Silva. My father-in-law is medically incapacitated. Complete deafness, severe isolation. Then I found another folder, labeled Medical Confidential. This was the deeper betrayal, the hidden truth that changed everything. Inside was a report, not from Dr. Evans, from someone named Dr. Alistair Thorne. I had never met this man. I read the assessment. Patient exhibits significant cognitive decline, confusion, memory loss, and paranoia. Diagnosis, early-stage dementia. Dementia. The lie was so vicious, so calculated, it stole my breath. They weren't just stealing my home, they were erasing my competence. My sanity. To make the theft easier, Dr. Thorne had fabricated a diagnosis. They had bought a doctor. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. This was criminal. I heard the front door open. Chloe was home. I quickly put the folders back, exactly as I found them, locked the drawer, replaced the key. I slipped out of the office, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The depth of their greed was staggering, but it was the casual cruelty, the way they spoke about me, the way they wrote about me, that truly broke my heart. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. I realized I had to listen closer. I had to see everything. That afternoon, they brought the conspiracy into my home. I was sitting in the living room pretending to doze when I heard a car pull into the driveway. It wasn't Mark's car. A moment later, Mark led a man into the living room. He was slick, expensive suit, too much cologne. It had to be Silva, the developer. This is the main living area, Mark said, gesturing around the room as if he owned it. Great light, as you can see. Silva nodded, looking around with clinical interest. He didn't even glance at me. It's a solid structure, Silva said, knocking on the walls. Good bones? We'll gut the interior. Of course. Update everything. Gut my home. Sarah's home, and the old man? Silva asked, jerking his chin in my direction. No issues there? He seems out of it. None at all, Mark said smoothly. He's basically nonverbal now, completely deaf, and the dementia is advancing rapidly. Mark lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. The doctors say he needs specialized care. We're moving him into a facility next week. A facility. The power of attorney will be finalized Friday. Mark continued. We can close Monday. Cash. Perfect, Silva smiled. A shark smelling blood. This market is hot. We'll have this place remodeled by spring. They walked out, still talking about square footage and profit margins. They hadn't even acknowledged my presence. In their eyes, I was already gone. That night I couldn't sleep. The lies echoed in my head. Dementia. Incapacitated. Facility. I heard the phone calls Chloe made when she thought I was asleep. I would sit in the darkness of my room, listening through the heating vents. The vents I installed myself. Honestly, Karen, she complained to a friend, her voice muffled, but clear enough. It's exhausting. He just sits there, staring. It's like taking care of a ghost, in the house I built, and the constant hovering. Chloe sighed. I can't wait until this is over and we can finally have our lives back. Their lives, built on the ruins of mine. Once everything is finalized, Chloe said, her voice brightening. We're thinking of moving to Florida. Mark deserves a fresh start. Florida, a fresh start, funded by the destruction of my legacy. I listened to my daughter dehumanize me. The pain was a physical weight, pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. My love for her had been unconditional. Hers for me, entirely conditional, and the condition was my assets. I decided to test them, to see how deep the resentment ran. I was sitting in the living room. I accidentally knocked over a glass of water. It landed on the new, ugly gray coffee table, the one that replaced Sarah's antique cherry wood table. The glass shattered on the floor. Water spread across the hardwood. Chloe rushed in, saw the mess, her face contorted in rage. Not concern, rage. God damn it, she cursed. The sound was sharp, ugly. She didn't ask if I was okay. She looked at the mess. He's so clumsy, she yelled at Mark, who had appeared in the doorway. I can't take my eyes off him for a second. Clumsy, a nuisance. She truly resented me. I wasn't her father anymore. I was an obstacle, a liability. I felt a wave of profound sadness, threatening to break my resolve. I wanted to give up, to retreat back into the real silence, to let them have it all. What did it matter now? But the memory of Sarah anchored me, her strength, her belief in me, the life we built together. I had to fight, not just for myself, but for her memory. I apologized with a gesture, maintaining the mask of the confused old man. Chloe sighed heavily, cleaning the mess with sharp, angry movements. The tension escalated as the week progressed. They knew the signing with Mr. Peterson was approaching. They were jumpy, short-tempered. He's getting restless, Chloe told Mark later. We need to speed this up. I caught him snooping in the study earlier. Snooping. In my own house. We need to make sure he's compliant, Mark replied. Did you get the prescription from Dr. Thorne? Yes, Chloe confirmed. Mild sedatives, just in case he gets agitated during the meeting with Peterson. Sedatives. They wanted to keep me quiet. Compliant. Drugged. The breaking point came on Wednesday. Mr. Peterson, my longtime family lawyer, came to the house. He was an old friend, a decent man, but perhaps a little too trusting. Chloe and Mark sat him down in the living room. I was placed in my armchair, a prop in their play. Chloe handed me a glass of water before the meeting started. I looked at it. Was it drugged? I pretended to drink, but let the water dribble down my chin. Chloe sighed impatiently and wiped my chin, her touch rough. Mr. Peterson, we appreciate you coming over, Chloe began, her voice dripping with false concern. The perfect grieving daughter. As you can see, Dad's condition is difficult. Peterson nodded, looking at me with sympathy. It's a terrible blow, Robert. I'm so sorry. I nodded vaguely, pretending to struggle to read his lips. It's more than just the hearing, though, Mark interjected smoothly. He adjusted his tie. A nervous tic. We had him evaluated by a specialist. Dr. Thorne. Mark handed Peterson the forged report. He's confused most of the time, Mark continued, lying effortlessly. He forgets things. He paused, lowering his voice. He gets agitated, sometimes aggressive. We're worried about his safety and his financial security. Aggressive? The lie was bold, setting the stage for any resistance I might offer. We believe it's time to enact the power of attorney, Chloe said, picking up the thread seamlessly. They had rehearsed this, and honestly, given Dr. Thorne's assessment, she sighed. We must discuss a temporary conservatorship. He simply cannot manage his affairs. He's a danger to himself. Conservatorship. They wanted to take away my rights, my freedom, my identity. Mr. Peterson looked hesitant. He read the report, frowning. Dr. Thorne, I'm not familiar with him. Robert has always been sharp as a tack. He looked at me, searching for the man he knew. Are we sure this isn't just the trauma of the hearing loss? He's highly recommended, Chloe said quickly. A specialist in geriatric decline. She put a hand on her chest. The performance was flawless. It's a decline, Mr. Peterson. It's rapid. We're doing this out of love. We want to protect him. Protect me by stealing everything I worked for? The hypocrisy was staggering. I looked at Peterson, urging him silently to see the truth, to question their narrative, to look past the facade, but he was blinded by their performance, by the forged document in his hand, by the authority of Dr. Thorne. I realized I was truly alone. I couldn't rely on others to save me. I had to save myself. They scheduled the final signing for Friday. The trap was set. After Mr. Peterson left, the atmosphere changed. They were victorious. They were already celebrating. That night, I lay awake, listening to them downstairs. The sound of popping champagne corks echoed up the stairs, a sound I used to associate with joy. Now, it made me sick. We did it, Mark said, his voice slightly slurred. Peterson bought it hook, line, and sinker. Thorne's report sealed the deal. Worth every penny. I told you I could handle him, Chloe giggled. A sound I used to love. Now it made my skin crawl. To the new owners of the $500,000 property, Mark toasted, and to Vince getting off my back. And to Florida, Chloe added. Finally, we can get out of this rut. It's amazing. Really, Mark mused. All that money, just sitting there, he never spent it on anything. Just work, work, work. Wasted potential. Wasted. My life's work. Wasted. Mom was the same, Chloe said, her voice hardening. So frugal, so boring. They never understood how to live. Boring. My life with Sarah. Our quiet evenings. Our shared dreams. The years of sacrifice to ensure Chloe had everything she needed. A college education. A down payment on her first house. Boring. Then came the words that shattered what was left of my heart. Once the papers are signed on Friday, we're set, Chloe said. We just need to keep him quiet and comfortable. She paused. Honestly, with his depression and his condition, he probably won't last much longer anyway. Being so helpless, it breaks the spirit. Won't last much longer. They were waiting for me to die. My own daughter, anticipating the end of my life as a convenient business transaction. It's a mercy, really, Mark agreed casually. A mercy. The pain was paralyzing. I couldn't breathe. I felt the darkness closing in. The urge to confront them right then, to unleash my fury, to roar like a wounded animal. But I knew if I did, I would lose everything. They would use my anger as proof of my instability, my aggression, my dementia. Dr. Thorne's report would validate it. I had to endure the agony, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. A cold, hard resolve settled within me. The silence I adopted as a shield would now become my weapon. They thought I was weak, helpless, deaf. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. The time leading up to Friday was the longest of my life. I played my part perfectly. More withdrawn, more confused. I shuffled when I walked. I spilled things. I let them guide me, feed me, dress me. I watched them basking in their impending victory. Their arrogance was their weakness. I needed irrefutable evidence, proof that I was competent, that I was not deaf, and that they were committing fraud. I needed to expose Dr. Thorne, Silva, and the danger of Vince. I remembered the old digital recorder. I used it for notes on complex building projects. On Thursday afternoon, they were out, meeting Mr. Silva, the developer, finalizing the theft of my home. I slipped into my workshop. They hadn't sold my tools yet. Thankfully, I found it in the bottom drawer of my workbench, under a pile of blueprints. It still worked. I felt ashamed, spying on my own daughter, preparing to record her betrayal. It felt sordid, dishonest. Was I sinking to their level? But the memory of her words, "It's a mercy," extinguished any guilt. This wasn't about morality. It was about survival. I recorded everything that evening: the casual cruelty, the planning for Florida, the chilling indifference to my fate. I heard Mark talking about the assisted living facility they had chosen. "It's the cheapest one that looks decent," he said. "Doesn't matter if the care is substandard. He won't know the difference." Substandard. The evidence was clear. The trap was ready. Friday morning arrived, the day of the signing. The house was buzzing with anticipation. Chloe was dressed immaculately, a sharp business suit, like she was closing a deal. Which, I suppose, she was. Mark was whistling, adjusting his tie, looking smug, confident. They looked like vultures waiting for the carcass to stop twitching. "Big day, Dad," Chloe said loudly, patting my hand. Her touch felt repulsive. "Clammy. We're going to make sure you're taken care of. Everything is going to be fine." I nodded, smiling weakly, the mask firmly in place. Inside, my heart was a war drum. Mr. Peterson arrived promptly at 10 a.m. He had a briefcase and a solemn expression. "Good morning, Robert," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, reassuring. "How are you feeling today?" I shrugged, pointing to my ears, shaking my head, the gesture now automatic. We sat in the living room. The documents were spread out on the coffee table. The new, ugly gray coffee table. I slipped the digital recorder out of my pocket. I pressed the red button, concealed under my hand. The final act began. "All right," Miss Peterson began, addressing Chloe and Mark. "I have the finalized documents. This grants Chloe full power of attorney over Robert's financial and medical affairs, and initiates the conservatorship process." He looked serious, given the circumstances, and Dr. Thorne's report. "I agree, it seems necessary. Dr. Thorne, the centerpiece of their fraud." Chloe smiled, her eyes bright with triumph. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson. You don't know how much this means to us." "It's a big responsibility," Peterson cautioned. "The court will monitor the accounts closely. Ensure everything is used for Robert's benefit." "Of course," Mark said smoothly, his voice dripping with sincerity. "His comfort is our only priority." I almost laughed. The audacity. Then he delivered his masterpiece of hypocrisy. "We're actually looking into specialized assisted living facilities," Mark said. "The best money can buy. It's expensive, of course, but he deserves it after all his hard work." The best money can buy. I remembered his words from last night. The cheapest one, substandard care. The sheer hypocrisy was staggering. They were painting themselves as martyrs while preparing to fleece me. Mr. Peterson turned to me. He pointed at the document. "Robert," he said slowly and clearly, "I need you to understand. You are giving Chloe permission to handle your money, to make decisions for you." He paused. "This is a legal transfer of your rights. Do you understand?" I stared at the paper, letting the silence hang heavy in the room. I looked confused. I looked lost. I looked like the man Dr. Thorne described in the report. Chloe leaned in, her perfume washing over me. Cloying, sickening. She took my hand, placed a pen in it. Her grip was tight, insistent. She guided my hand toward the signature line. "It's okay, Dad," she said, her voice soothing, dripping with false comfort. "Just sign here. We're going to take care of everything." She applied pressure to my hand. "We're doing this for your own good." My hand hovered over the paper. I could feel the tension in the room. Thick, expectant. Mark was leaning forward, his eyes fixed on the pen. Greedy, hungry. Chloe's breath was warm on my cheek. I looked up. I looked directly into Chloe's eyes. They were wide, greedy, expectant. And then I spoke. My voice was rough from weeks of disuse. But it was clear, strong, loud. "I prefer my steak medium rare, Chloe, not the canned soup you've been feeding me." The silence that followed was absolute, deeper and more profound than the silence of my deafness. Chloe gasped. Her hand flew away from mine, as if burned. The pen clattered to the floor. Mark froze, his mouth half open, his face turning ashen. Gray. Like the curtains, Mr. Peterson stared at me, his eyes wide with shock. Dad? Chloe whispered, her voice trembling, barely audible. You can hear? Every single word, I said, my voice gaining strength, resonating with a power I hadn't felt in weeks. I stood up. I felt tall again. The old man's smell, I said, looking at Mark. The burden, the perfect timing. I turned back to Chloe. And the dementia. I'm curious about this Dr. Thorne. I've never met him. Mark stood up abruptly, his face turning an ugly shade of red, the smooth mask shattered. Now wait a minute.
He sputtered. He's confused. He doesn't know what he's saying. He turned to Peterson. This is a moment of clarity. It won't last. Dr. Thorne explained this. The trauma. Sit down, Mark, I commanded, the authority returning to my voice. The authority of a man who spent 40 years running construction crews. He sat, deflated. Robert, what is going on? Mr. Peterson asked, bewildered, his gaze shifting rapidly between us. I regained my hearing a week ago, Mr. Peterson, I said, keeping my eyes locked on Chloe. She was shrinking under my gaze. The confident businesswoman, replaced by a terrified little girl caught in a lie. A week ago? Peterson echoed. Why didn't you say anything? Because I needed to hear the truth, I said, the words heavy with grief. I needed to hear how my daughter and her husband were planning to steal everything I worked my entire life for. I pointed at the documents on the table. I needed to hear them plan my destruction. Dad, no, that's not true. Chloe cried, tears starting to flow. These were not the melodramatic tears from the hospital. These were tears of panic. We were trying to help you, she pleaded. We were desperate. Mark owes money. To Vince? I asked quietly. Mark flinched. His eyes darted to the door. Help me? My voice cracked with emotion. By calling me incompetent? By paying Dr. Thorne to forge medical reports? By trying to drug me? By selling my house to Mr. Silva? I paused, letting the words hang in the air. By waiting for me to die? I whispered. You said it was a mercy. A mercy? Mr. Peterson looked horrified. He turned to Chloe, his face thunderous. Is this true? This report from Dr. Thorne? Did you fabricate his condition? He misunderstood, Chloe insisted, grasping at straws, tucking her hair behind her ear rapidly. The trauma, he's twisting our words. Is that so? I reached into my pocket. I revealed the digital recorder. The red light was still on. I pressed play. Mark's voice filled the room, smooth and confident, recorded just minutes ago. His comfort is our only priority. We're actually looking into specialized assisted living facilities, the best money can buy. I pressed stop. That was just now, I said. But this is from last night. I navigated the files, found the recording. Pressed play. Mark's voice again, clear as day. It's the cheapest one that looks decent. Doesn't matter if the care is substandard. He won't know the difference. I pressed stop. And this is from Wednesday night. I pressed play again. Mark's voice, slurred with champagne. Peterson bought it hook, line, and sinker. Thorne's report sealed the deal. Worth every penny. Then Chloe's voice. He probably won't last much longer anyway. Being so helpless, it breaks the spirit. And Mark's casual agreement. It's a mercy, really. The silence in the room was deafening. The truth hung in the air.
Ugly and undeniable.
Mr. Peterson stood up abruptly, his face a mask of disgust. He started gathering the papers, putting them back into his briefcase with sharp, angry movements. I believe my services are no longer required here, he said, his voice cold as ice. He looked at Chloe and Mark with contempt. You should be ashamed of yourselves. This is elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud. He picked up the report from Dr. Thorne. And this, he said, tearing the paper in half, is a disgrace. He snapped his briefcase shut. I will be documenting everything I witnessed and heard here today, he continued. I will be contacting the state medical board regarding Dr. Thorne and the police regarding the forged reports. He paused at the door. I suggest you find new representation, criminal representation. Mr. Peterson, Please, Chloe begged, grabbing his arm. He shook her off. Robert, I am so sorry. I was completely fooled. So was I said quietly. After Mr. Peterson left, the door clicked shut behind him. The sound was final. I faced my daughter and her husband. The fight had drained out of them. Exposed, defeated. I want you out of my house, I said, my voice trembling, with the effort to control my rage and my grief. Dad, please, Chloe whispered, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of defeat. Where will we go? She cried. We have nothing. We were desperate, Mark snarled, his mask completely gone, the ugly desperation beneath. Vince is going to kill me. We needed the money. He pointed at me, accusingly. You didn't need it. You were just wasting away here. This is my life, I said, gesturing to the house around us. The walls, floors, the memories. This is the home Sarah and I built, and you tried to steal it from me. I looked at Chloe again. I searched her face for any sign of the little girl I loved, the daughter Sarah and I had raised, but she wasn't there, only a stranger wearing her face. I trusted you, I said, the grief finally breaking through. The words tasted like ash. You were my daughter, and you betrayed me. She flinched as if I had struck her. Dad, No, I interrupted. There is nothing left to say. Tusk, you have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. I turned my back on them. If you are not gone, I will call the police. I walked out of the room, unable to look at them any longer. I went into my workshop, the scent of sawdust, the familiar shapes of my tools. It was a comfort, a return to reality. I picked up a piece of sandpaper. I started smoothing the edge of a bookshelf I had been working on before the accident. The rhythmic motion was calming, a return to the honest work that defined me. I heard them upstairs, the frantic footsteps, the muffled arguments, the slamming of drawers. They were arguing, blaming each other. Mark's voice, sharp and accusing. Chloe's, desperate and shrill. The sounds of a partnership built on greed, crumbling under pressure. And then the front door opened and closed. The sound of their car engine starting, fading away down the street. They were gone. The house was silent again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the terrifying void of deafness. It was a peaceful silence, a chosen silence. I stood alone in the workshop, the silence pressing in on me. I had saved my home, my legacy. But I had lost my daughter. Weeks turned into months. I went back to work. The familiar whine of the saws, the camaraderie of my crew. It was a healing balm. John was glad to have me back. He told me about the chaos Chloe and Mark had caused, the bills they hadn't paid, the projects they had delayed. I hired Maria back. Her smile lit up the house again. I fixed the mess they made. I slowly rebuilt my life. It was hard work, but it was honest work. I never saw Chloe again. I heard the fallout through Mr. Peterson, who insisted on helping me secure my assets and change my will. Dr. Thorne lost his license and faced fraud charges. Mark was arrested. His dealings with Vince and the fraud regarding my medical reports caught up with him. He and Chloe divorced shortly after. He left her with nothing but debt. She had moved to another state, trying to start over. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her, the little girl with the bright smile, the infectious laugh, the one who used to follow me around the workshop, building sculptures from wood scraps. I wonder where she went, what happened to the daughter I loved. But then I remember the woman who sat in my living room, calmly plotting to steal my life, waiting for me to die, and the grief turns cold. The deafness changed me. It taught me the value of silence, the power of listening. But it was what I heard when the silence broke that truly changed my life forever. It taught me that sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who will hurt you the deepest, and that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that save you. I sit in my workshop now, the evening sun casting long shadows across the floor. The air is still. I pick up a small wooden bird. I had carved it for Sarah years ago, I run my thumb over the smooth grain. I miss her. I miss the daughter I thought I had. But I am still here. I survived, and in the silence, I found a strength I never knew I possessed. I heard the wind chimes outside the window, a soft musical sound Sarah had loved. I was alone, but I was not broken. Thanks for listening. Please rate this story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.